Hello, this is Veronica Combs. I'm coming to you from RSA 2020 in San Francisco. It's been a great week full of lots of conversations about technology and security and the human element and all of that. Today I'm here with Stephen Malone from Mimecast, the Director of Product Management for the company.
Hello there. Nice
Thank
to
you
meet
for joining us, joining me today here. So you all came out with a special RSA edition of your threat intelligence report. So what are you seeing on the landscape today?
We did. So we publish these regularly, but some really interesting insights in this one. So essentially, out of 202 billion emails that we processed throughout our infrastructure, we saw about 92 billion of those just rejected outright.
Wow.
But the remaining messages, we saw a 145% increase in bad stuff over the last quarter.
So that would be new things that you hadn't seen before.
So new things that we hadn't seen, or just resurgence of other attacks.
Oh, right.
So as an example, things like impersonation attacks are just persistent and just continue. But we actually saw a decrease in those kind of attacks in this edition of the report. But having said that, impersonation still made up about 25% of the attacks that we saw, along with our old friend ransomware as well.
And impersonation is someone pretending to be someone else to trick you. You think it's a trusted business partner or a colleague, but it's actually a bad actor.
Exactly, and then you transfer $1 million to someone else's bank account.
It's hard to believe these things really happen, but I guess they do, don't they?
And they do.
And Emotet, that came back up to life or resurged?
So that one was really interesting. So Emotet was everywhere. This was the vast majority of attacks that we saw. And it's interesting because Emotet kind of disappeared over the summer. So some of their back-end servers were taken offline. But it's back. It's bigger and badder than ever. We've seen the attack sort of flip-flop between using a fileless attack vector, but also using a more traditional kind of macro weaponized file as well for delivery. So yeah, Emotet was everywhere.
And is that one of the Trojans? It seems like they're all sort of merging together.
Yeah, so it's interesting as well because Emotet has kind of varied and fluxed in what it does, but yeah, making use of Trojan as well. But yeah, we've seen it everywhere. What was also interesting in this version of the report is that we didn't see any specific industry being targeted any more than others. Things like retail, as an example, the holiday season, we would expect that to be attacked more than others. But things like transport, manufacturing, retail, we saw high volumes of attacks there.
Right. And I got a lot of different information about healthcare hospitals or healthcare organizations being attacked by ransomware, but no one wants to talk about it. I mean, it's embarrassing, but I don't know how you communicate the risk if everyone's too embarrassed to say anything about it.
Exactly. And I mean, ransomware is really interesting because the first piece of ransomware was seen in 1989.
Oh, wow.
So I always say it's the same age as Taylor Swift, and it's probably made more money than she has over those years.
Well, that puts it in context very nicely.
Exactly. But, especially in healthcare, ransomware is a huge problem because people's lives are at stake here. In other businesses, it causes financial disruption, but so many systems within healthcare organizations are used for patient care. And if those are on unprotected networks where ransomware can spread, that costs lives. So, you can kind of see why it continues to be a problem, why there's such a sensitivity about ransomware in those kind of organizations, but why, it's something that...
Right, they have to take on one way or another, yes. And what did you see with voice phishing in the intelligence report? That seems like something new and scary to worry about.
Definitely, yes. And there are always so many new and scary things to worry about. But yeah, we saw phishing or voice phishing increase. And actually, 2 or 3 newer attack vectors. So phishing being one of those. QR codes as well. We've started seeing those used in email-based attacks.
Oh, wow.
And that's a really interesting one because, again, that's a technology that was designed to aid or to be a convenience aid.
Right.
But obviously it's an image that you can display within an email. That means it's harder for email security scanners to detect a problem.
Right.
But really, all you're doing with a QR code is directing the user somewhere else. So maybe that then downloads a file, it opens a website.
Right.
But yeah, so we're seeing that, and also fileless attacks. Again, we mentioned earlier that Emotet is utilizing that attack vector, but again, fileless attacks we're seeing increase as well. And those are the kind of attacks that don't use, well, as the name suggests, don't use a file,
right.
but resident in memory within, within the computer.
Right. So, Mimecast made some product announcements at the show too this year?
We did. So it's been another fantastic RSA conference. We've really enjoyed it, and we've been talking about our email security 3.0 strategy at the show. So essentially, we see the world of email security broken down into 3 distinct zones. So zone 1 is the perimeter, and what's interesting there is that a lot of companies will tell you that the perimeter doesn't exist anymore.
I was just going to say that. That's what they tell me.
But really, the MX record is a perimeter of sorts.
Right.
So, that is the point of entry for email. So we still see the email gateway as a perimeter, even though we're in the cloud and many others are. And also, email obviously is one of the most utilized attack vectors.
Right.
So we see protection there as really important, and we announced a new browser isolation for email.
What does that mean?
What does that mean? So essentially, it's another layer for our email protection services. If users are clicking links within emails, as well as the checks that we already do to make sure that those links aren't directing them to phishing sites or credential harvesting sites, browser isolation will allow us to protect what we call uncategorized sites for the end user. So the way that those sites can be dangerous is essentially if they're spun up very quickly to be used in a phishing attack, as an example. The site won't have been categorized, so often it's harder to detect or block based on category.
So like an example would be some news site around the coronavirus that's promising a cure or more. So it's too new to fit in a bucket that is bad.
Yes.
So
So
it goes in yet another bucket the uncertain bucket, so that you can determine.
Correct. We then open the site within what we call an isolated browser. So
okay.
it's an environment where the user can see what's happening, but they can't interact or be infected.
Oh, okay. So it's not a sandbox, but it's
a sandbox of sorts, but we're kind of we're rendering what the website looks like without actually giving the user access to the website.
the ability to click and do something foolish. Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So new protections within zone 1. Zone 2 is what we call inside the perimeter, so within the organization itself. Within our awareness and training product line, we're really excited now that we've integrated that fully into our platform, so that makes it easier for companies to configure and use that part of our service.
Got it.
And then zone 3 is the world outside and around those 2 areas, so integrations and adjacent technologies. We made 2 acquisitions recently, and they fit very nicely within that zone 3 area. So Mimecast DMARC Analyzer now, which helps organizations to become DMARC compliant, and also Segasec, which we have rebranded as a product called Brand Exploit Protect, so helping organizations essentially to protect their brand out on the internet. So if other people are spinning up similar websites to yours, so Tech Republic maybe,
Right.
you can monitor those and issue takedowns.
Oh, okay. So the brand protection service looks for bad things happening and then helps the company resolve them.
Looks to see if other companies, or if other attackers rather, are using website or domain names that look like very similar to yours, but are being used for nefarious purposes.
Right. And integration seems to be, that was a theme I picked up at the conference. Like, there's so many tools and they all do different things, and so getting them to work together in a way that doesn't result in information overload is an important task for security professionals.
Absolutely, yeah, definitely, and that is a huge part of what we do at Mimecast, and we're uniquely positioned to do that. So we're a service that was born in the cloud back in 2003, and because we have a single cloud platform, that allows us to open up a lot of our technology using APIs. So historically, we've used that for customers to make administrative changes. but we now have a full API and integrations program where we partner with other key vendors. So the advantage there is that if you're an organization with an endpoint solution or a SIEM, a firewall, or all of the other technologies that most companies have, we can integrate, make use of, take data from, push data to, essentially work better within the organization.
It helps companies to get more value out of the tools they have already instead of adding something new on. Cool. Well, thanks so much for talking with us today. This is Veronica from RSA 2020.